Welcome to the video lecture series, Culture, Worldview, and Origins. We're Tim and Holly Nyquist. We've had the privilege of living cross-culturally the last 25 years. Through that time, we learned a lot. We went as educators and we come back educated. This series that we're working on right now is on culture and how culture influences our thinking processes and how we think, and not only what we think, but how we think. Physically, it changes the anatomy or the physical brain and how it functions. And the interesting part was trying to teach cross-culturally in different environments and how that culture influences the thinking processes and how me as a teacher had to adjust to the different thinking processes. What we've done is accumulated 21 differences between my way of thinking and versus the students' way of thinking, and how those 21 differences can add up to really form a wall of miscommunication or lack of comprehension in the material of what's being taught. What we've done is we've made a chart of the 21 differences. Now, the differences, I've contrasted them between a Western way of thinking and a Western cultural tendency way of thinking and a non-Western cultural way tendency of thinking. For those that are not familiar with the Western or non-Western, which I call it, is Western comes from, it's not a geographical orientation today. It's an identification of a way of thinking that comes from the Greeks. The Greeks at their time, when they started this development of this way of thinking, were west of the old world, west of the Orient, and so they were the Westerners. And their way of thinking then got classified as Western type of thinking. So today we have those types of thinking in different pockets of the world, and those are called Westerners. Western type of education, Western type of thinking. And so it does not have to do with a direction, a geographical location. It has to do with an orientation of a type of thinking. Now, you can call the other type of thinking, you can make it particular as it's this, and I just chose to name it non-Western. It's the original. It's the more natural response, way of thinking without having been educated in the Western system. So what we've done in this video series, we're going to focus on culture because as Stephen Jay Gould had mentioned, in that there are 4 factors that influence a person's perception process. And for him, they were theory, they were habit, prejudice, and culture. And we're going to go over all 4 of those factors of what he lists, but we're starting with culture because culture is something that forms us and pressures us subconsciously. It's not something like a theory or habit or prejudice that we develop or that we choose, but culture is something that imposes a force upon us that we're not even aware of until we go to another culture. And then we realize they do things differently. They think differently, and they think the same about me. And that is exactly what happened in my experience as being a cross-cultural teacher. I have taught culture anthropology for 15 years cross-culturally, and I learned a lot. And this is what we're going to share in this series, is 21 differences and how those differences can influence in the educational process. What we're going to start with is the first difference is the universal domains, as seen from a Western tendency or a non-Western tendency. And universal domains, what does that mean? Well, universal domain means I was formed to think of things as either natural or supernatural. And I am a believer, so I went to church, so I believed in the supernatural. But during the week, I worked and taught in the natural world. And so we have divisions, and it comes from philosophy, Greek philosophy, of making categories and divisions. And I thought that that's the way most people think. And thought is natural and supernatural. And therefore, I work in the natural world all week, and on the weekend, I go to church. And then I give alms to the poor. I do a lot of things because of my belief in supernatural. Now, this side, the universal domain, non-Western tendency, is not natural supernatural. It's more creator and created. Going back to this side, what you'll notice is that I have two bars between, or slashes between, the natural and the supernatural, meaning that those two do not intermix. It's kind of it's a membrane that you cannot cross, that separates the natural from the supernatural. And so therefore we can study the natural world without thinking that it's going to be invaded by the supernatural. This side doesn't see it that way. It sees things as creator and created, and there's a fluid movement between those two entities. So in other words, they don't have a natural world. What do you mean by natural world? Well, would we mean by natural world that there was no intervention, no supernatural because of the bars? Over here, they say, no, there's a lot of intervention. The Creator has power over. The Creator sustains, maintains, and actually lives within the created world. Many of them would say in the rural areas, the Creator lives up there on that high hill. We haven't seen him. It's been generations. We've almost forgot about him. But there is a Creator, and everything else is created, and whatever else is created is not the Creator. Even though the created might have special powers, that doesn't change him from being created, or her from being created. Whereas on this side, if there's something that shows special powers or different powers, then they go from the natural side to the supernatural side, and then there's no distinguishing factor between the range of powers. There's different powers, but they're all just on the supernatural side. Point number 2. Matter and spirit. Matter and spirit kind of follow the same separations, but here we have matter and 2 bars of separation, and spirit, which follows the universal domains, which they are 2 separate domains in that matter is matter. If you want to believe in the spirit, that's fine. You can do that on Sunday in the spiritual things, but those 2 do not influence each other. They are separate. They are 2 different things. This side doesn't see it that way. This side says the non-Western tendency is spirit is first, not matter. Spirit and matter, and there's only 2 colons in between, which means that there's fluid movement between the 2 entities. They aren't domains. They aren't 2 separate domains. They're one unified domains. And that the spirit world influences the material world, very much so. And in this way, they would say that sicknesses, that things that go wrong, that death are often caused by the spirit world, that they did something wrong to offend the spirits. And where on this side, they would prescribe a medication. If somebody got sick, they would never think it was a spirit. They would just think it's a sickness that is material based, and therefore we give a prescription of how to fix it. Now, which one is real and true? Well, I was brought up on this side, but in the 25 years of visiting the rural areas, I've seen some stuff over on this side that doesn't fit my Western concept of division of spirit and matter. So it's an interesting concept to just keep in mind when working with people from another culture as to what their concepts are. Number 3, universal operating system. What is the universal operating system? How does the universe operate? How do I think it operates? Western-wise, we believe in a closed system, that the universe and everything is a material system and it operates by natural laws. And those natural laws are constant, consistent, and uniform. Therefore, we can predict the future. We can understand, extrapolate backwards because it's based on uniformitarian principles, that it's closed system. This side over here doesn't believe that. They believe that by the non-Western tendency, it's an open system, very open, very much so. And it's governed by the Creator himself, herself, or by the created spirits and miracles and powers. And it's very non-predictable. Because of it being an open system, this side over here believes that you need to work with the spirits, negotiate with the spirits that are over the matter. If you're fishing, if you're hunting, if you're chopping trees, you need to negotiate with those spirits of those areas to be able to do those activities. Interesting how we see things differently, and how a culture how we are cultivated in a way to think and to see the world. Stephen Jay Gould said that the way that we perceive the world and the way in which we perceive it is different according to theory, habit, prejudice, and culture. Just culture itself influences how we perceive the world. Thank you for listening. We're Tim and Holly Nyquist. If you'd like to communicate with us, you can do it through doubleroadrover.com. That's our blog spot. Or directly through email, thn.academia@gmail.com. Thanks for listening. Hope to see you in the next one.